If you were writing a script for a high-stakes political drama about the British monarchy, you would probably throw this ending right in the trash.
Oh, completely. It feels way too on the nose.
Yeah, it feels totally scripted, but here we are. It feels like the season finale of a decades-long saga, and the breaking news today is just undeniable. A member of the royal family, the king's own brother, has been arrested.
And we aren't talking about, a polite conversation with the authorities over tea here. We are talking about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, being formally taken into custody by Thames Valley Police.
Right, and I want to stop you listening right there because I know exactly where your brain goes when you hear Prince Andrew and arrest in the same sentence. You're thinking about the Virginia Gifford case.
Naturally.
You're thinking about the sexual abuse allegations that have been dominating the headlines for years. But here's the twist, and it is a massive one. That is not what he was arrested for today.
No, and that's the crucial distinction here. It changes the entire texture of this story. This isn't a charge regarding the abuse allegations, though, they are obviously the backdrop for all of this. This is about corruption.
Right.
The specific charge is misconduct in public office. The allegation is that Andrew was effectively acting as an intelligence conduit for Jeffrey Epstein.
So just so we are completely clear on this, we have moved from a personal scandal, horrific as it was, to a literal state security scandal.
Exactly. We are talking about the alleged sharing of confidential government material, and the sources we're diving into today, they paint a picture of what one victim's brother called a house of cards finally collapsing.
Yeah.
Because it's not just Andrew.
No, the blast radius here is absolutely huge. We're looking at a domino effect hitting global titans of industry, tech, politics. We're seeing names like Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Catherine Rumler, people who operated at the very highest levels of the American establishment, just facing this sudden, brutal reckoning.
It really is a story about the currency of access, who had it, how they sold it, and the total erasure of the line between public duty and private benefit.
So, here is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to connect these dots for you. We're going to walk through the specifics of Andrew's arrest and the king's reaction, which tells us a lot about the future of the monarchy.
It really does.
Then we're going to look at this latest tranche of Epstein files released by the DOJ to understand why billionaires and former White House counsels are suddenly resigning in droves.
It's a messy web, but the pattern is actually very clear once you know what to look for.
Let's start with the event itself. Thursday morning, February 19, 2026. Break down what actually happened for us.
So just after 19:00 GMT, Thames Valley Police made their move. Andrew was arrested, questioned, and then released under investigation.
Okay.
He was held at the Aylsham police station. And the image that's going to define this moment and probably end up in the history books is this photograph of him leaving the station just reclining in the back of a vehicle.
And I have to mention the irony here because you really, really can't make this up. Today, the day he's arrested for misconduct, is actually his 66th birthday.
A pretty grim 66, to be sure. But we need to drill down on this specific charge. Misconduct in public office.
Yeah, because it sounds kind of bureaucratic, right? Like a glorified parking ticket.
It does sound like that, but it is a very serious common law offense in the UK. It actually carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment.
Life. Literally life in prison for sharing emails.
Theoretically, yes. It applies when a public officer willfully neglects their duty or misconducts themselves to such a degree that it amounts to an abuse of the public's trust.
Wow.
In this case, it stems from his time acting as a British trade envoy. The allegation, which is based on these newly released emails, is that Andrew wasn't just, chatting with Epstein. He was forwarding confidential trip reports and investment briefs to him.
And the timing really matters here, right? It wasn't like he sent them 5 years later as a souvenir or a casual update.
Crucially, no, the timeline suggests he was forwarding sensitive government information to a private financier almost immediately after receiving it.
Unbelievable.
He was essentially treating Epstein as an unauthorized stakeholder in British trade interests.
That's the influence scandal part of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to have a shady friend. It's another to actively feed him government intel. Now, usually, when a royal gets in trouble, the palace closes ranks. The drill, never complain, never explain.
Right.
But that absolutely didn't happen today.
No, the reaction from the palace was ice cold. King Charles was apparently not even told of the arrest in advance.
Wow, really?
Yeah. When the news broke, he was at an event in central London, and his statement was incredibly brief. He just said, "The law must take its course."
The law must take its course. I mean, that feels like royal code for you are completely on your own, brother.
It is the ultimate distancing maneuver. There is zero royal protection here. It's widely understood that Prince William and Catherine fully support this stance as well.
Because they're cutting him loose.
Exactly. The monarchy is effectively firewalling itself. They are saying, we are the institution. Andrew is a private citizen who broke the law.
But then you have a completely different reaction coming from across the pond. President Donald Trump weighed in while he was flying on Air Force One today.
Right. When reporters asked him about the arrest, Trump called it a shame. He literally said, I think it's a shame.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah.
You have the actual King of England saying follow the law, and a former U.S. president calling accountability a shame. Now, as we're looking at these sources, it's important to point out we aren't taking a political stance here, but just reporting the stark difference in how global leaders are reacting to this accountability.
Absolutely. It just highlights two very different worldviews on power and accountability. The king is prioritizing the survival of the institution by strictly adhering to the legal process. Trump's comment reflects a more, I'd say, personal, perhaps protective view of high-status individuals facing legal trouble.
Yeah.
It suggests a belief that certain people should just be insulated from these kinds of indignities.
Now, functionally, I have to ask the constitutional question.
Yeah.
I know Andrew's been stripped of titles before, but is he still technically a prince? Is he still in the line of succession for the throne?
Yes. And that is the constitutional headache keeping royal scholars awake at night right now. Despite everything, the previous scandal, the financial settlement, now this actual arrest, Andrew, is still eighth in line to the throne.
That's wild.
And technically, he is still a counselor of state.
Okay, remind us what that actually means in practice.
So, a counselor of state is one of the very few people who can legally stand in for the monarch if the king is ill or overseas.
Wait, so?
Yeah. In theory, a man arrested for misconduct in public office could be asked to sign legislation on behalf of the king.
That seems insane. Why haven't they just removed him?
Because the king can't just do it with a stroke of a pen. The line of succession is governed by Parliament. And because the British monarch is the head of state for the Commonwealth countries, places like Canada, Australia, Jamaica, it would technically require the support and new legislation from all of those countries to change the line of succession.
So it's a total logistical nightmare.
It's a diplomatic minefield. In practice, they just won't ever call on him. But the title remains, and that tension creates a massive reputational drag on the monarchy. It's like a ghost in the machine they just can't exercise.
I want to pivot here, because while we get caught up in the royal drama and the constitutional law of it all, there is a very real human cost at the center of this that we cannot lose sight of.
Absolutely. We have to remember the victims in all of this.
We have a reaction in the sources from Sky Roberts. He's the brother of Virginia Giudice, who is, of course, one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, and the woman who sued Andrew.
And this is probably the most heartbreaking part of the story. Virginia Giudice took her own life in April.
Yeah.
She isn't here to see this arrest happen. Her brother, Sky, gave an interview where he said this moment is where the house of cards starts falling.
That phrase really stuck with me, house of cards. It implies a structure that was built to look incredibly solid, but was actually always fragile.
It's very fitting. He described the family's reaction as a mixed bag of emotions. There's vindication. He actually talked about screaming with relief at 3 a.m. when he heard the news.
Wow.
But then comes that gut punch realization that Virginia isn't there to answer the phone. They can't tell her that this is finally happening.
That is just devastating. And Sky and his wife Amanda are saying that the world is looking at the U.S. to do the right thing, that we are sitting on, quote, mountains of information.
And that mountain of information is exactly what has triggered this domino effect. Because it's not just about Andrew. The release of these latest files by the Department of Justice has exposed a network that goes deep into the American business and political elite.
All right, let's talk about that domino effect. Because Andrew was the big, flashy headline. But if you look at the business pages today, some massive names are absolutely scrambling. Let's start with Bill Gates. This isn't just a casual, oh, I met him once at a cocktail party situation, is it?
No, and the fallout really reflects that. Bill Gates was actually scheduled to give a keynote at the AI Impact Summit in India. This is a massive event.
Huge.
He withdrew just hours before he was supposed to speak.
And we can safely assume the reason wasn't, food poisoning.
The timing is completely undeniable. The latest tranche of emails shows multiple meetings between Gates and Epstein between 2011 and 2014.
Okay, context is key here. I think people forget the timeline. By 2011, Epstein wasn't just a controversial figure. He was a fully convicted sex offender.
That is the critical point. This wasn't 2005. This was years after Epstein's 2008 conviction in Florida. He was a known predator. The emails discuss a joint philanthropic fund between the two of them, which eventually collapsed.
But Gates has said he cut ties because he realized Epstein's ideas were a dead end, right?
He has, but the emails show a continued engagement during a time when everyone in those circles knew exactly who Epstein was. The reputational damage of staying in contact post-conviction is immense.
And the files also include some really inflammatory claims written by Epstein himself about Gates, right?
Correct. And this is where it gets incredibly bizarre. Epstein wrote emails to himself.
To himself.
Yes, basically making allegations about extramarital affairs and drug use regarding Gates. It seems like he was cataloging dirt, or perhaps just spinning fantasies of leverage. Now, to be absolutely clear, the Gates Foundation has categorically denied these, calling them absolutely absurd and completely false.
Right.
But the reputational damage doesn't really come from those drug claims. It comes from the simple fact of the meetings. Why was the founder of Microsoft sitting down with a convicted sex trafficker in 2014?
It really begs the question of what Gates thought he was getting out of it. Which brings us to Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, former Harvard president, just a titan of intellect and policy. And the emails show him asking Epstein for dating advice.
This is where the why becomes fascinating. Summers has effectively been erased from public life this week.
Yeah, he resigned from the OpenAI board, took leave from Harvard, and lost his contract with the New York Times. Just boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. And the emails reveal this strange intimacy between them. Summers wrote to Epstein about a woman he was talking to, saying she was busy, and he told her, quote, "Awfully coy you are."
Awfully coy you are. And he's sending this to Jeffrey Epstein.
And Epstein replies, "You reacted well. Annoyed shows caring."
Oh, my God.
It perfectly illustrates how Epstein operated. He didn't just move money around. He ingratiated himself with these intellectuals. He stroked their egos. He became a confidant to them.
It makes Epstein sound like some sort of twisted life coach for the elite.
A life coach who was trafficking women. That's the true horror of it. It shows that intelligence, being a Harvard president or a Treasury secretary, is not a shield against manipulation or poor moral judgment. It shows how desperate these powerful men were for validation, even from a literal monster.
Now, this next one really blew my mind because of the sheer national security implication of it. Catherine Ruemmler. She was the White House counsel under Obama, and until last week, lead counsel at Goldman Sachs.
This is the example that most closely mirrors the misconduct in public office theme we saw with Prince Andrew. Ruemmler stepped down from Goldman Sachs after emails showed she forwarded non-public White House communications to Epstein.
What exactly was she sharing? Because non-public communications could mean a schedule change, or it could mean state secrets.
It was related to the 2012 Secret Service prostitution scandal.
Okay, wow.
She was managing the fallout for the administration, and she forwarded internal material to Epstein, asking him for his PR advice.
Wait, pause. Let me make sure I'm hearing this right. You have the White House counsel dealing with a Secret Service scandal involving prostitution in Cartagena, and she asks Jeffrey Epstein, a man convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor, for advice on how to handle it.
The irony is absolutely blinding. It's almost literary in how tragic and absurd it is. But beyond the irony, it's a massive, serious breach. A private citizen, a criminal, was being consulted on sensitive government crisis management.
And what's her defense?
Ruemmler's spokesperson says she has done nothing wrong legally, but admits she wouldn't do it today knowing what she knows now.
But that excuse, "I wouldn't do it today," doesn't really hold up when you realize he was already a convict then. It just shows how deep his tentacles went. He wasn't just a guy floating around at parties. He was in the inbox of the White House counsel.
It speaks to the absolute normalization of his presence. He was considered such a fixture of the elite landscape that even the top White House lawyer didn't blink at asking him for help.
And speaking of political heavyweights, we have to mention Peter Mandelson. We talked about Andrew earlier, but Mandelson is the other British figure in seriously hot water today.
Right, the former British ambassador to the U.S., a huge, huge figure in UK politics. He's currently under criminal investigation by London police for the exact same thing as Andrew sharing confidential government info.
And the fallout for him has been swift, too.
Very. He's lost his diplomatic post, resigned from Labour, and resigned from the House of Lords. And there's a quote from him in the files where he refers to Epstein's release from jail as Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. Calling the release of a convicted sex offender Liberation Day.
It shows a level of camaraderie that is just Very difficult to explain away now. It suggests he saw Epstein as a victim of the system rather than a perpetrator. It aligns him emotionally with the criminal, not the law.
It really feels like the floodgates have just completely opened. I'm looking at this list of resignations from the sources, and it's just rapid fire. It's hard to even keep up.
It is a corporate fallout of massive proportions. It's not just politics, it's sweeping through business.
Yeah, let's run through a few. We've got Thomas Pritzker from Hyatt Hotels.
Retiring. He admitted to terrible judgment. The emails show him discussing a meeting with Epstein at the Louvre in Paris,
Casey Wasserman.
selling his talent agency.
Right.
He flew on Epstein's jet with Bill Clinton, and there were flirtatious emails with Ghislaine Maxwell back in 2003.
Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem from DP World.
Replaced as chairman. This is one of the biggest port operators in the world. Email showed Epstein explicitly calling him a close personal friend.
It seems like Joichi Ito from MIT was sort of the canary in the coal mine for this, wasn't he?
Yes, back in 2019, Ito resigned from the MIT Media Lab for concealing financial ties to Epstein. At the time, I think that seemed to a lot of people like a specific, isolated academic scandal.
Right.
Now we see it was the template. That standard of accountability, if you took the money, if you took the meeting, you're out, is finally being applied globally across all these sectors.
So let's synthesize all of this for you listening. We have a prince arrested. We have tech moguls and finance giants stepping down. We have political careers ending in total disgrace. This feels materially different than the scandals of the past few years.
It is different because the scope has dramatically widened.
Mm.
For a long time, the Epstein story was framed strictly as a sex scandal, and it is that, horrifyingly so. But what these latest files reveal and what these arrests signify is that it is also a massive influence scandal.
It's about the economy of secrets.
Exactly. It's about access. It's about people in high office, whether that's a British trade envoy or an American White House counsel, feeling completely comfortable sharing state secrets with a private financier.
Yeah.
It's about the total blurring of lines between public duty and private networking. Epstein collected people. He collected secrets. And he used them to build a fortress of protection around himself.
And for years, wealth and power were the shield. If you were rich enough, if you were powerful enough, you were essentially untouchable.
But that shield is cracking. That is the big takeaway here. The persistence of the victims' families, like Sky Roberts, and the relentless release of these files by the DOJ has stripped away that protection.
Right.
Being a prince doesn't stop the police anymore. Being a billionaire doesn't stop the emails from coming out.
It forces you to wonder about the sheer volume of it all, though. We're talking about millions of files.
That's the lingering anxiety for everyone who is in that orbit. This was just the latest tranche. There are terabytes of data still out there.
That leads me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with to mull over. We've seen a prince of the blood and a former White House counsel fall because they shared secrets with Jeffrey Epstein. If they were willing to put that kind of sensitive information into his hands, how much more of our private government history is actually sitting in the archives of a disgraced financier?
And who is waking up tomorrow morning wondering if they are the next domino to fall?
A terrifying thought for them, but maybe a hopeful one for justice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.